Well, hello, everybody. I assume you all can see me on screen now. And thank you to the panelists too. I was able to catch most of the panel, and Pavi and Debbie, one of the things they talked about was being the only in the room and not having that mentorship and support. And so I wanted to ask you all, have you ever been the only in a room? The great thing about this conference is we're not the only here. There's a lot of us who are women, and I suspect women of different races and ethnicities and ages, disabilities, religions, regions, sexual orientations, and more. And I can't wait to see all of you all again in person in our one room again, because that is a really powerful moment. And I suspect that most of us have been the only at one point or another in the room. And I want to ask you to remember that. When you walk into a room, whether it's a virtual room or a physical room, look around that room and see if anyone else might feel the only in that room. And then ask yourself, how can you help them feel more included? The reality is that women are underrepresented in tech. All women are, especially Black, Indigenous, and Latinx women, and especially disabled women, and especially at the top of our organizations. I've been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion for many years in tech, and I can say that it's changing, but it's excruciatingly slow. I'm sure some of you all feel that who've been here for a while. And why is that? There are several reasons, including that we often rely on the diversity, equity, and inclusion folks, the heads of ERGs, employee resource groups, or HR to make it happen, to make change happen. And then we hunker down and do our own job. But we're part of the culture. And when we don't do anything, things remain the same. It takes all of us working together to fundamentally shift a culture. So what if we work together to support each other so that all of us can rise? Having done this work for some time now, I have come to believe that in order to really shift diversity, equity, and inclusion in this industry, in the tech industry, it will take all of us working together to create change. So what does that look like? Well, I'll give you an example. Women in the workplace are more likely to be interrupted, three times more likely than men. And that means we're less able to express our ideas, share our opinions, provide feedback on things that matter to us. And it can affect us in the short term by shutting us down in meetings where we can't get a word in. And it can significantly affect our career if we aren't able to show leadership, provide insight, contribute to innovation. It matters. So when Barack Obama first took office as president of the United States, just 1/3 of his top aides were women. And the women found they were often being left out of important meetings, or when they were in those meetings, they weren't being heard. So they got together and they talked about it and started to amplify and echo and attribute each other. So when one woman said something, another would echo the idea and attribute it back to her, forcing recognition for her contribution. And they did that over and over and over again. And President Obama did take notice and began calling on more women in the meetings. We can work together to make a difference for each other. So allyship, what is allyship? Allyship is empathy in action. Allyship is seeing someone, really seeing someone, learning what they're uniquely experiencing, where they might need support, and helping them succeed and thrive with us. We're at a unique time in history, year 2 of the pandemic, with a lot of people really suffering. Many of us are facing the edge of burnout. Lots of women in particular have taken a step away from their work in order to be caregivers full time. Asian women are experiencing an increase in anti-Asian hate. Black and Indigenous women are continuing to face daily systemic discrimination. Disabled women experience severe underemployment and unemployment and much more. Immigrants, Muslim women, LGBTQIA+ women, we're all experiencing some form of exclusion, and our intersectional identities often add additional layers. So this is really important now. Our research at Change Catalyst shows that women who have at least one ally in the workplace are nearly twice as likely to feel safe in the workplace. And our research also found that having a good ally positively impacts job and workplace satisfaction, productivity, engagement, stress, our overall happiness, collective happiness, and career advancement. So what does allyship look like? Learn, unlearn, and relearn. So women are intersectional. How are you learning about the unique experiences of Black women, Indigenous women, Asian women, Muslim women, Jewish women, disabled women, women who are lesbian, intersex, trans, pan, bi, queer, women who face age discrimination, women who have many of those intersectional identities, women who just don't have the same access and opportunities that you have. And then don't forget our non-binary friends as well. There are gaps in our understanding of our history as well as our present. So what are you doing to fill those gaps? Where are you learning? How are you getting to know people who are different from you and really broadening your networks and your experience? Are you working to learn the language that people use to describe themselves, their pronouns, their preferred communication styles? What's going on at home? What do they care about? So where do you have room to unlearn and relearn? And then do no harm. Understand and correct our biases about each other. We all harm people without intending to through biases that we learn from our families, our friends, culture, media, and they can harm other women. So do you make jokes about other women? Do you know, there's a joke around pumpkin spice latte right now, lattes right now. Jokes or comments about what other women are wearing, whether a woman is off, there's something off about her, or she's a little fill in the blank. Is it harmful and perpetuating stereotypes? So education is one thing, but shaming and perpetuating stereotypes is another. Even in the little things that we say and do, we can be pretty unkind to each other. And ultimately, it can be pretty harmful to all of us. So really think about the biases that you might be showing and sharing. How do you hold space for other women to share different concerns and different experiences? Who's in your in-group and who's in your out-group? And can you expand that in-group to include more women? What biases might you have about other women and how will you correct them? And also understand and overcome microaggressions. So microaggressions are little verbal or nonverbal slights or insults that, whether intentional or not, can make someone feel belittled, othered, disrespected, and like they don't belong. They can be very harmful and they can affect us in the moment. And also research is showing that they can affect long-term physical and mental health as well as career health. So I talked about interruptions before. I've been harmed by many people interrupting me countless times, especially men. And I'm sure many of you all have as well. And we do it to each other as women too. Even if this has happened to you, it doesn't mean you don't necessarily unconsciously do it to other people. It's happened to me so many times. I never thought I would do it to anybody else. But several years ago, my co-founder called me out one day. He said, you know, every time, we'll call her Genevieve, every time Genevieve starts talking, you start multitasking. You listen to everyone else, but when she speaks, you start doing other things at the same time. I was shocked. And the next time we were in a meeting together, I noticed I started to multitask when she was speaking. So notice that in yourself. Do no harm to each other. Give other women your full attention. Don't interrupt. Echo and attribute their ideas if they aren't heard. And then work on your biases and microaggressions. There's a lot of language that has underlying racial and sexist, ableist, heteronormative meanings. So learn what that language is and remove it from your vocabulary so you're doing no harm unintentionally. So how will you work to overcome microaggressions? And then advocate for other women. So an advocate uses their power and their influence to support someone or a group. When women who put their jobs on hold to be full-time caregivers return to work, especially women of color, advocate for them. Millions of women are going to be coming back to work with a gap in their resume. How can you, when we talked about hiring processes earlier, how can you make a case for them to come back? How can you, if you have influence on the hiring managers, or if you're a hiring manager yourself, change the way you filter resumes to account for this. Also, right now, notice when someone is burning low and help them find their fire. Studies are showing that women are feeling extra burnout right now. So really tune into this and support each other. Check in with each other. Help each other find joy, find happiness, find hope in a world that can be difficult at the moment. Women make 37% less than men, and women with intersectional identities earn significantly less. So help the women in your life get paid what they're worth. Just as an example, when I was interviewing for a senior level job once, a friend of mine connected me to an HR director in a similar company, and she gave me the lowdown on all the compensation and equity packages I should demand for my role. It made such a difference when I walked in and made that negotiation. So help each other with the knowledge that you have. Mentor someone junior to you, and if you're further in your career, sponsor them. Use your power and your influence to open doors and open networks for them. Sharika said, have their back when they're not in the room. How are you having people's back? How are you having women's back when they're not in the room? Where do you have an opportunity to really advocate for another woman? And then stand up for what's right. It's the hardest part of allyship, to stand up, step in when someone is being harmed. But it's so important when we see something, that we say something, that we do something. So if you see someone is saying something belittling or doing something belittling or racist, ableist, work to educate them and stop that harm from happening. Ideally, that's in the moment. But you can also do that after the fact. You can take somebody aside and educate them. And then make sure that you're checking in with the woman who's experienced that microaggression, because it's harmful. Check in and make sure they're okay. And then plan how you're going to work together in the future to protect and support one another. So that one person in that room becomes two people in that room, and two people become three, and hopefully three people become four. And then you have more power and more influence together. How might you intervene and stand up for what's right? Work on that in yourself. Notice those moments where you can step in and make a difference. Lead the change. You can lead the change no matter where you are in your organization. It sucks that we have to do this all ourselves. And I will say that I have a live event series and podcast called Leading with Empathy and Allyship. And we talk about solutions and have regular audience members that come. And I will say that 70% of our audience is women. So women may be doing more of the work. We may be doing more of the work, but who's going to do it if we don't do it, right? We need to do the work within ourselves, and we need to lead the change and push for change. So advocate for systemic change in your organization. Companies are listening now more than ever. I work with several tech companies, and I can tell you, because I'm working with them, that they are listening more to what their people are saying right now. So tell them what you want. Advocate that your company hire more women and anyone with underrepresented identities at every level of the organization, including the board, all the way up to the board. And not just hire, but build inclusion and equity, compensation and promotion equity, and really drive the change internally through the culture. And then think about your own work. How can you do your own work in a way that is more inclusive? Really spend some time thinking about that this week. Is it accessible to women with disabilities? Are you thinking about the women with different ethnicities and races, women from the LGBTQIA+ community, women in different regions, and so on? Really think about how you can become more inclusive and equitable in your own work, whatever that is. If you're a manager, how are you creating a more inclusive team? And if you're a leader, how are you impacting the systems, the processes, and the culture so that they are more inclusive and equitable? What will you do to lead the change from wherever you are? And what can you do to transform your industry? So events like these are helping change the industry. Thank you, Denise Cardoso. What can you do when you see events that don't have women speakers, don't have diverse women speakers? Advocate for diverse women speakers. If you create events, make them inclusive. We actually have an inclusive events toolkit at our website at changecatalyst.co. But lots of kind of tips that we have learned over the years from doing inclusive events. Get to know other people in your field and really work to create change across companies. Make a plan to really move things forward across the industry. I believe that we can be the generation that generates the change that we want to see. So let's be allies, better allies for all of us. So as Denise said, I have a new book out called How to Be an Ally. You can go to Amazon or your favorite bookseller and purchase it and review it too. That is something that an ally can do for me, is to review it, because it makes a big difference in the success of a first author's book. And you can learn more about me at melindabrianaepler.com. And then we have a special opportunity today. Normally I'd see you all in person and have a book signing or a meeting table where I could connect with you in person, which we unfortunately don't have in the virtual space. But you can buy a signed copy of How to Be an Ally if you go to ally.cc/signed book. I'll put that in the chat too. So go there and get a signed copy of the book. And I appreciate you all and all the work that you do to make the world better for all women. Thank you.